Welcome to a Minnesota Banking Minute. My name is Jay Tamburino with the Minnesota Bankers Association, and today I have a special guest, Savannah Richardson from Conetrix, and this kind of spun off into another conversation that we were having before about what's going to replace the FFIEC CAT tool that we all have to go away from by the end of August. So with that, with the FFIEC retiring the CAT tool, what does that mean for financial institutions?
Right. And so really, I want to kind of start with the history of the CAT. So the CAT was released back in 2015, and it hasn't really seen any major updates to it since 2017. So that's
Yeah.
an 8-year gap of emerging technology, emerging threats that have entered our environment, and this framework wasn't really being updated. So like you said, the CAT is retiring on August 31st, 2025. And the reason being is because there are now newer, more flexible frameworks available like the NIST CSF and the CISA cybersecurity performance goals that better align with those evolving threats. So what does that mean for financial institutions? Well, for banks, this means it's time to start planning for a transition to a different framework that still supports a strong risk-based security program.
Now, you mentioned the two, and I'm familiar with both NIST and CISA, but do you have one over the other that you recommend for banks?
Yeah, sure. So, I do have a preference, and it's the cybersecurity framework, the NIST CSF. It's a little broader, and it doesn't have necessarily these types of controls that you would just implement. Sometimes adding controls to your environment, especially or to your organization, those technical controls could get really pricey. But they have more of a generic or general set of outcomes for you to follow, that so that you have the flexibility to apply controls that work for your organization. So it's not very, very strict. But again, if you're looking for something a little more flexible, the CSF is a good option.
Okay, that's kind of what I'm seeing too. I've been playing with both formats, and I kind of lead towards NIST more than the other, but
Yeah,
I'm more familiar with NIST, so that's just the way that works.
sure.
So
Yeah.
starting now, we know that's going to sunset at the end of August.
Mhm.
What should banks be doing right now to prepare?
Sure. So, there are about 1,000,001 different frameworks that organizations can choose from. And sometimes you'll use either just one option or you may use multiple options. But while you're looking for these options, there are some key factors to consider. First, you want to look at, does it match your size and complexity? You want something that's right sized for your organization. So not something that's too simple or something that's not too overwhelming, but that applies to the resources that you have. Another thing is that it needs to be easy to understand. Frameworks that are written in clear, practical language are just easier for your team to work with. Another key factor is it needs to be realistic and to be able to implement at your organization. So you want to look for a framework with flexible structure so you can grow your program over time. And you also want to consider cost factors here. So first of all, you'll want to consider control cost. If a framework is being or is recommending technical controls at your organization, then that probably means that you're going to have to spend some money on applying those controls. Another cost that you'll want to consider is time. If you're looking at a lengthy framework, then you're going to spend a lot of time going through that, and your team's going to have to spend a lot of time combing through it. And so you'll want to take a look at that. And then also vendor costs. Are you going to have a consultant or your MSP help you walk through the framework? So those are just some things to consider when you're trying to implement a framework. I just have two more points that I want to make here, but you also want to make sure that it's familiar to your stakeholders. That includes your board, examiners, auditors, and even your vendors. So familiarity doesn't mean you have to use the most popular option, but if you go with something that's a little less known, then you'll know that you have to spend more time walking others through it. So it'll take time to do that. And lastly, you want to make sure that it's easy to report on. So having a really, really good software comes in handy in this situation because it can help turn your framework into clean, shareable reports that you can give to your stakeholders.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Savannah, great. Appreciate your time today. And if you have more questions, I'm sure our members will reach out to you.
Yeah, for sure. It was a pleasure.